Question number one is why is Betty resistant of having Jake in her class? Betty mentions that Jake struggles to keep himself organized and he's always behind when starting a task in class. And by doing so, acting out in class like that, he and falling out of his seat, he is distracting the rest of the class, and therefore the students aren't able to pay full attention and focus on what they should actually be doing. Question number two is, do you think Jake is ready to be placed in general education full-time? I don't believe so. Currently, Jake only spends about 2 hours a day in the class. And I think it would be too big of a transition to just throw him in a general setting when he's not used to it, at least right away. How can Sharon and Betty work together to best serve Jake's needs? And what types of services or support would Betty be more comfortable, would help her be more comfortable with having Jake in the classroom full time? First, I think Sharon and Betty need to get on the same page as to what is the best option for Jake. Since he only spends 2 hours in the general education class with Betty, I think if he were to slowly transition into the general education class by spending more hours throughout the week, so starting with 2.5, 3 hours, and working his way up to being in that class full time. When he is fully in the class, it would be beneficial for there to be another teacher, a special education teacher, that can sit in the back of class and monitor his behavior and keep him on task, along with other kids that are in the class that get easily distracted like Jake. Another person in the room to help sustain classroom management is also would also be helpful for Betty. What strategies can be implemented to adjust Jake's behavior and improve his organizational skills? I think implementing a checklist or a school planner for Jake to write all of his assignments in that are either have due dates coming up or something that was worked on in class today and he has homework to bring back tomorrow. Having that written down and then being signed by the teacher and parent and bringing that back the next day to school, I think would help him in terms of getting his homework done and it being done on time. There would be a benefit to having Jake having a buddy in class, a peer that is his age, that can help him stay on task and maybe help him with some of the assignments if he's not understanding fully. Organizing a periodic cleaning time for the whole class to be able to clean out their desks and lockers if they have them in the room would make sure that Jake is keeping everything in order and easy to reach whenever anything is needed. When Jake came to Betty's class, she was told that he had fine motor problems and behavior typical for students labeled with ADHD. How are students identified with ADHD and who are those that can make the diagnosis? When teachers spend a lot of time with their students, they're able to pick up on certain behaviors that are kind of out of the norm for that certain child, and academic performances that may raise some red flags that relate back to a learning disability and ADHD. It is imperative that the teacher has a conversation with the children's parents or guardians and explain to them why they think that they might have a disability. And then speaking with the student's physician will lead to narrowing down what the child might be struggling with and if ADHD is the correct diagnosis. What are the dangers of personnel without appropriate expertise stating a student has ADHD? It's very important to stay away from labeling children with certain disabilities if they're not 100% sure or even equipped to do so. Once someone is labeled, they begin to perceive themselves differently, and people also look at them differently. If someone is falsely diagnosed, it may make them question themselves, and they may experience negative effects on their mental health. The 3 types of ADHD is where inattention is a primary symptom that can be shown through daydreaming, skipping parts of homework, being unorganized. Another ADHD type is when the primary symptom is impulsion or hyperactivity, which can be shown through not being able to sit still at a desk, blurting out answers without raising their hand, or being called on, and then running rather than walking down the hallways. The last type of ADHD is a combination of the two, inattention and impulsion, and it can be signs of all of those listed before and put together. Do you believe Jake demonstrates behaviors indicative of ADHD? If so, what behaviors? Beginning in 3rd grade at 8 years old, I believe there are multiple reasons as to why Jake would be unorganized, off task, and the class clown, other than ADHD. 8 years old is still pretty young, and at this age, kids want to fit in, and if Jake believed that being the class clown would get him to fit in better with his peers, I think that would be a reason for acting out. 8-year-olds are often off task and unorganized during school at multiple times throughout the day, so I don't think that is very out of the norm. However, the behaviors do align with ADHD combined type. I think further conversations with parents, teachers, and other doctors of Jake's would be beneficial to narrow down if this is a normal 8-year-old child acting out, or if he does have a diagnosis or a learning disability such as ADHD.